It's been a minute, but I'm here.
There's no romance, what's the point? Just kidding, maybe.
Darling,
Yo, it's Ann, aka Antagonist. Welcome back to my channel. It's Romance Trope Thursdays, a series on my channel where I do a deep dive into a different romance trope in each video. And by the end of the video, you'll get my personal book, TV, and movie recommendations. You're welcome. This is part 5 of the series. Last time we covered fake dating. So if you missed that video, you can watch it in the Romance Trope Thursday playlist I'll have linked up in the cards above. Y'all have been waiting on this video. Courtesy of me, I did promise it a while back and y'all have been waiting patiently. So just be glad that if you're watching this video, it's finally come out. All right, enough stalling. Here's my take on opposites attract. Let's get into it.
I do love nothing in the world so well as you. Is not that strange?
It's pretty difficult to trace the origin of the saying opposites attract. We could point to ancient religions and philosophies like Taoism and Taoism who started the concept of yin and yang. The concept of yin and yang touches on the duality of opposing forces and describes how opposite forces are interdependent, interconnected, and complementary in the natural world. Like how darkness cannot exist without light and vice versa, and in many circumstances, they can elevate each other. Winter comes around to oppose summer, rain comes to oppose dry seasons, or even the opposition of male and female creatures in nature. Opposites attract is also a principle of science and physics, specifically when it comes to magnetic forces and attraction. As they say, the simple rule to remember when it comes to magnets is that opposite poles attract, while like poles repel.
Bob, stay in school.
Even in psychology, the concept has been posited by multiple psychologists and has seen countless of psychological studies testing to see if the saying is true when it comes to romantic relationships. More on that later. But to take opposites attract in the less literal sense and more in the romance trope sense, the opposites attract trope has permeated itself through many forms of literature throughout all of history, where often in relationships or romantic pairings, each member compensates for the other's weaknesses with their strengths and vice versa to form a beautiful and cohesive union. Nowadays, the idiom opposites attract is strongly linked to the beloved romance trope.
Oh my God, we have something in common.
Yes, well, statistically that was bound to happen.
So before I go over the classifications, I want to define opposites attract as a trope. Opposites attract is a trope in which two people who contrast each other in personality, lifestyle, or else enter into a relationship, mostly in the romantic sense. So when it comes to the classifications of the opposites attract trope, we're looking at what areas do the two people in the couple contrast and have opposition. The first category is lifestyle/status, meaning the way the two characters live and the way they're perceived by society are opposite. Common examples would be if one person is rich and the other is poor, popular, unpopular, or like if a celebrity is dating a small town nobody. A juvenile and rather visual example of this category is Lady and the Tramp, where Lady is a prim and proper dog who's been adopted by a rich family, while Tramp is literally named after what the people are calling him in the streets. Next, we have personality, which is when both characters have opposing personality traits. Personality is probably the most common classification for characters to differ when it comes to the opposites attract trope. Dare I say it's probably the more essential classification to hit when it comes to this trope. So you could have one character who's very extroverted and the other shy and introverted, or a popular personality contrast is grumpy sunshine, but we'll talk more about that later in subtropes. You could have someone who's adventurous paired up with someone who's a cautious worrier.
what?
Another pretty popular example is the uptight woman with a man-child, or an uptight man with what some people would consider a manic pixie dream girl archetype. Essentially, any personality trait a person can have, you just find the yin to their yang. And the last classification is ideology, which is where the characters have opposing views, methodologies, or principles. This could be religious versus non-religious, like I have here with Booth and Brennan on the wall. Brennan is a genius forensic scientist and an atheist. She views the world only through strict scientific evidence, so much so that she tries to rationalize every emotion she has, including love, which can be detrimental to her being able to express her feelings, while Booth is a FBI agent who is playful, superstitious, emotional, and a devout Catholic. Another example of this would be if you had a romantic person paired up with a pragmatist. Think of Jane and Kevin from 27 Dresses. Jane is a wedding-obsessed, hopeless romantic, and Kevin is a jaded, down-in-the-dumps marriage hater. Another example that teeters between ideology and maybe lifestyle and status would be in 2 Weeks Notice, where Sandra Bullock's character is an environmental lawyer and activist, while Hugh Grant's character is a corporate billionaire for a property development company, so opposing lifestyles and ideologies. You'll see that many opposites attract situations and pairings embody multiple of these classifications, if not all of them. In my opinion, the couple should at least cover 2 of the 3 classifications to truly be categorized as opposites attract and to capture the essence of the trope. Let's say you have a celebrity dating a normal person. That would cover lifestyle and status. But let's say they're both singers, they're both happy-go-lucky people, and they both love planes. I don't know. I think it would be difficult to argue that they should be categorized under opposites attract, and they would likely fall under celebrity romance only. But if you have a celeb and a normie, and one of them embodies a black cat type of energy, and the other is a golden retriever ray of sunshine, now we're cooking with opposites attract. Also, piling the different classifications together definitely makes things more interesting. Like, yeah, popular girl and nerd guy is cool, but if you make the popular girl poor and the nerd guy rich, you bring another more interesting dynamic, which can make things much more fun and entertaining to watch.
So, how do we keep it light and breezy? I know, a comprehensive set of rules.
How am I attracted to you? Doesn't matter. I am. Go.
Within opposites attract, there are dozens of subtropes that take on a life of their own. But in this video, I'm just gonna go over the most popular ones. So first, we have bad ex good, also known as bad boy and good girl, or good bad girl, good guy, bad guy, but like all the iterations. Essentially, it's a pairing where one character is a rebel, rule breaker, sometimes even a criminal, and then the other is a stickler, follows the rules, and is often prudish. This trope really reminds me of Wattpad, especially in the early 2000s. Like, every other book I was reading was bad boy, good girl. And the boy was always in some underground fighting ring for some reason. What a time, what a time. Next, we have popular ex-nerd, which is a subtrope that refers to the pairing in which one person is popular and the other is a nerd or unpopular. This trope is immensely popular in YA books and high school romance and dramas. The jock with nerd coupling and pairing would also fall under this subtrope. That's why I have Quinn and Logan from Zoe 101. And our last subtrope is the beloved and probably the most popular subtrope in opposites attract, grumpy sunshine. This subtrope really has a life of its own and could be its own video. Probably, like I said, the most popular subtrope that we have here. And essentially, if you're not familiar with it, grumpy sunshine refers to when you have 2 people with opposite personalities, one being a positive, upbeat person, the other being a grumpy, pessimistic person, enter into a romantic relationship. So here I have Andy and April from Parks and Rec as they embody the grumpy sunshine trope. Usually with grumpy sunshine, when it comes to media, the male character tends to be the grump and the female character is the sunshine. But with this pairing, they've subverted the trope, which has contributed immensely to their popularity in pop culture.
What's this?
Ta-da!
You minced.
I did! You have had quite an influence on me.
We're gonna go over the necessary key ingredients to successfully capture the essence of the opposites attract trope. So the first ingredient is opposition, as in the 2 characters have opposing lifestyles, statuses, ideologies, or personalities, as discussed in this video. And often these differences are stark and further highlighted when the characters meet. So the darkness in one is highlighted even more by the lightness in the other. Then, naturally, we'll start to have tension, which is the second ingredient, because it's hard out here for a player.
Yes,
You really are trying to understand the other person, where they're coming from, but they're so opposite to you that it's hard to really find common ground. And you might start to look at your painting and go like, oh my gosh, their darkness is ruining my sky. You might start to ask yourself some big questions like, can I even work or belong with this person who is so different from me, and how? Then eventually you start to find some common ground or compromise. The third ingredient is common ground. So you see the good sides of the other person's traits
and things that you could work on to adjust to them. And you'll finally have a little bit of overlap in your personalities, views, and stuff. And in a truly beautiful and symbiotic opposites attract relationship, you should find and see the appreciation from your partner for the traits that you bring to the table as well, while also loving the traits that they possess and what they can bring out of you. So if an introvert is interested in an extrovert, they should be able to see the good traits that they bring, like being a good listener, while also appreciating that the extroverted partner may bring out other positive traits in them, like confidence and bravery, as an example. So as we can see in the painting, the brightness of both characters is being highlighted by their symbiotic relationship. And, you know, they're really able to be themselves. They're coming into their own. They're starting to actually have features. And it's just, wow, this painting actually is
And I'm
slay.
so creative, like.
And then eventually we have lovers who are in a beautiful and interdependent relationship. Shout out to Easily Art Studio for the art inspo. If you're in the Utah area, which is an entire state, I guess, you should check them out. I have never been. I do not live in Utah, but just wanted to give that shout out and credit where it's due. Please do not sue me. I do not practice plagiarism. Okay.
They do say that opposites attract.
Yes, they attract. But do they live happily ever after?
So let's go over the criticisms of the opposites attract trope. First criticism is the incompatibility of the couple. So sometimes characters share fundamental differences that cannot be compromised on. Touchy areas like politics and religion are common examples of places where people are not advised to find somebody with opposing views. And often when it comes to those core values, having someone on the opposite side could be a sign of incompatibility. And sometimes characters who are fundamentally incompatible are forced into these opposites attract pairings. An example of this is in the film You've Got Mail. Tom Hanks's character, Joe, is a ruthless businessman, while Kathleen, played by Meg Ryan, is a thoughtful, down-to-earth owner of a small independent bookshop. But secretly, they've been having an online correspondence with each other without knowing who the other is. Joe is cynical while Kathleen is hopeful. Opposites. But Joe is fundamental in the shutting down of Kathleen's small business, and the film tries to have us think that this is a good thing because apparently Kathleen didn't want to work anyway. It's positioned like we're supposed to root for this couple, although all signs throughout the film point to them being incompatible. The second criticism is when characters have to change themselves. So think of that iconic scene in Grease where Sandy shows up in her new greaser outfit to be good enough for Danny, and they break out into song and everything's fine. But should being with the person who you love mean changing your lifestyle completely to adhere to theirs and becoming almost unrecognizable to the person you once were? You should be able to be yourself in a relationship. And if one person's wants and needs is taking priority over the other partner's, there's an imbalance, which suggests that both of the people in the couple might be better off finding someone who shares more similar interests and values. Sometimes characters' ideologies are so different that it's a detriment to themselves by being with each other if it means that they have to compromise on so many of their core values. Also, I had to point out the blatant bias and sexism when it comes to films of the early 2000s and before with opposites attract, because it seems to always be the female character who's changing herself, and oftentimes for the worse. Like in the film Knocked Up, where Ben is a pothead man-child and Allison is positioned as an uptight girl boss. In the film, after a one-night stand, Allison is unexpectedly pregnant by Ben, and all the traits she possesses, like being nurturing, thoughtful, and organized, which are all positive traits for a parent, are juxtaposed by Ben's lazy and aloof attitude. Yet the narrative points to Allison having to compromise with him, but why? Why when he hasn't shown many positive traits to being a partner or a future father? The same can be said for Grease, The Ugly Truth, Purple Hearts, and The Breakfast Club. Like, oh my goodness, don't get me started. That makeover scene gets me heated because she looked so much cuter before. Like, what is this? Criminal. This is criminal.
Electric chair.
I'm not saying that people can't change or improve in relationships, but a lot of times the girl character was completely fine and the film fails to show me why they should change. And if you ask me, oftentimes the female character changes for the worse and leans more towards the male character's lifestyle or values, even though this male character has shown actually problematic traits from the start and has done nothing to change them. The last criticism is the wish fulfillment part. I think this trope is often disguised as a form of fantasy or wish fulfillment, as in pairing characters that likely wouldn't be together in real life because it's something that audiences or the author wants for themselves. It's kind of giving low self-esteem. Hear me out. If we look at real life, often celebrities date other celebrities, hot people date hot people, popular people are with popular people, and so on and so on. But often the positioning and the narrative throughout these opposites attract scenarios is that if a nerdy girl gets with a popular guy, she's so lucky to be with him, which can create a narrative that the nerdy girl is only triumphant when she gets with a popular guy who's unlike her, rather than if she were to get with someone who shares more similarities with her and was of lower social status. When in reality, being with someone like you can be very fulfilling, even more so at times. Or the same could be said in the opposite way, as in this nerd guy is so lucky to get with this popular girl because they don't really like or value the traits that they possess. So they want their partner to be the opposite, and they only value their partner in spite of their own values, which can be a form of like self-hatred or, low self-esteem. Like, I know it's not that deep, but in a good romantic opposites attract setting, both characters should appreciate the values that they bring to the table while being able to admire the traits that their partner is bringing too, not because they hate their own traits and want someone else who has much better traits, but because they can appreciate the traits that they bring to the table together. Hope that made sense.
No?
No.
Is that the only word that you know? No?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
This trope is often applied to real life. I've heard many a times that opposites attract when it comes to romantic pairings, but does science agree? We're going to dive a little bit more intellectually into this trope and see what psychologists have to say about it. As I mentioned in the history part of this video, opposites attract has been posited by many psychologists, the first being Robert Francis Winch. Robert Francis Winch, who studied spouses in the 1950s and came to the conclusion that it wasn't similarities that made a relationship work, rather it was complementarity. In other words, this meant that if a person was extroverted, they would pair better with an introverted person and vice versa. Why? Well, Winch believed that people looked for complementary traits in their romantic partners, as in they looked for the traits that they lacked themselves in order to reap the benefits. But Winch's study has been disputed many a times, and many modern psychologists say that there are often more similarities between couples than there are differences. They speculate that now in our society, similarity attraction is becoming more and more of a thing. In a 2017 study titled "Birds of a Feather Do Flock Together," it was concluded that spouses and friends tend to be similar in most characteristics, including age, race, income levels, education, and attitudes. A similar conclusion was reached in 2013 when the dating site eHarmony audited their users and found that although opposites did create an initial spark, it was similarities that made for the most successful long-term pairings. But overall, psychologists have found that when it comes to personalities, the conclusions on opposites attract versus similarities attracting is less straightforward. Angela Bond, associate psychology professor at Wellesley College, concluded through her study in 2017 that specifically when it came to the big five personality traits, those did vary and differ a lot across couples. The big five personality traits being openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, extroversion, and neuroticism, where people fall on either sides of the scale. So the common thread throughout all these studies is that when it comes to personalities, complementary and opposite traits do attract, but not so much when it comes to other factors. Logan Ury, author of How Not to Die Alone and dating psychologist, posits this healthy middle ground when it comes to opposites attract in dating.
Here are some things that matter less than people think they do for long-term relationship success. Having a similar personality or similar hobbies. It's fine if we have different hobbies as long as you make me feel like I can explore mine without judging me for it.
So interesting, because me and my girlfriend are completely different. She is super spiritual. She believes things that are metaphysical and can't be proven. And I'm like, science, 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 evidence.
Right. And maybe at some point in your life you thought, oh, we have to have the same interests. No, you probably both want to be curious and be respectful and you want to understand her breathwork stuff. It doesn't mean you need to share it. And with similar personalities, it's the same idea. I remember I was coaching this guy who had a huge, larger than life personality, crazy nicknames, life of the party. And he wanted to find someone like that because he's like, well, she needs to party with me. I was like, dude, you are so much. Two of you in a relationship would be exhausting. Two of you at the same dinner party would be exhausting. I want you to find somebody who compliments you. And so the woman he ended up with is very different from him. She's not at the party. She's at home, but she's the home base for him. And he is the energizing, wild part of their relationship. And so it's not that people have to find their opposites. It's that you shouldn't focus on just finding your identical twin, your personality twin.
It takes me 10 minutes to log into this thing. Felicity does it in 2 seconds, and Ray probably invented it.
Yeah, you're probably right. Except Felicity didn't choose Ray. She chose you. Sure, she has a lot in common with Ray. But sometimes what looks good on paper isn't what works in real life.
Opposites attract is quite a popular romance trope and character device. Why is that? Firstly, it's always entertaining for people to watch and read about tension between characters, especially when they are so different. It can be very fun to see characters who seemingly wouldn't be together find common ground and work things out despite their differences. It's also really exciting to see the ways that different couples will fit together despite such opposition. As well, opposites attract is a trope that actively shows the compromise between a couple, which is a very relatable and essential part of relationships. It's beautiful to see the give and take between partners, the ways that they can teach and learn from each other, how they complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, and ultimately become better together. On to the recommendations.
We're gonna be fine.
How can you be so sure?
Because we found ourselves in each other.
So for TV shows, I have Nick and Jess from New Girl, Jake and Amy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Oliver and Felicity from Arrow. Ooh, they ate up Opposites Attract. Ate it up. The couple from Crash Landing on You, which is a Netflix K-drama, Jackie and Hyde from That 70s Show, Quinn and Logan from Zoe 101, Diane and Sam from Cheers, Booth and Bones from Bones, Maeve and Otis from Sex Education, or Ruby and Otis from Sex Education. Both of them are giving Opposites Attract. And the characters from My Sassy Princess, another K-drama. For movies, I'd recommend She's All That, Trainwreck, Tangled, Enchanted, 2 Week Notice, Princess and the Frog, The Sound of Music, Tarzan, Pride and Prejudice, A Walk to Remember, Can't Buy Me Love, Much Ado About Nothing, Geek Charming, Life as We Know It, 27 Dresses, and finally Guardians of the Galaxy. For books, I would recommend Beach Read, Charming as a Verb, People We Meet on Vacation, Rosie Project. Ugh, that book got me into adult romance, and it's one of my favorite books to this day. I would also recommend 2 mangas, Maid-sama and Flunk Punk Rumble, also known as Yankee-kun to Megane-chan. All right, thank you for watching this video. Let me know what you think of the Opposites Attract trope. Do you love it? Do you hate it? What are some of your favorite iterations? Give me some recommendations so I can have some fun as well. If you made it to the end of this video, please consider subscribing. And I'm saying that for your benefit. It's not for me, it's for you, because when you press subscribe, you become 99% hotter. I don't make up the rules, they just happen. So click the subscribe button, see what happens, see how everybody looks at you in the streets and saying, woo, woo, because you're hotter. You're welcome. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.